recipient also to get like the recipes of the protocols of fermentation. Another thing that they have been doing is also to see fermentation is according to the varietal. They don't apply the same standard fermentation to all of them. Many customers have asked the same. If we add something or they are infused, and the answer is going to
El diviso. Meaning of El diviso is something. There's a mean.
Inicialmente pues la finca tenía ese nombre, ¿no? Pero también pues, ese nombre es también por el tema de que la finca está en una parte alta y pues se logra divisar gran parte de la región. Bueno, desde la parte más alta de la finca alcanza a ver Bruselas, Pitalito, parte de Istmo, un poco de San Agustín. La finca El Diviso está en una empresa familiar, tiene alrededor de 28 años. Inicialmente pues cuando mi papá compró este predio era de una área de 1.5 hectáreas y en el transcurso de los años pues ahorita en la actualidad hay 17, 16 en café. Hace más o menos aproximadamente unos 7 años pues arrancamos pues, como un proyecto con mi hermano en esto de empezar a cambiar, pues la finca estaba toda cultivada en cafés de variedades tradicionales y empezamos a cambiar sembrando algunos varietales hace más o menos 7 años, hace más o menos 5 años que empezó todo este proceso de hacer nuevos procesos, empezar a hacer naturales. En realidad la finca ya está en un 90% cultivada en lo que son variedades de especialidad. Wow. Natural abajo, o la finca pues como está, digamos que este es el punto más bajo de la finca, estamos más o menos a 1750 y la parte más alta de la finca está 1950.
Cherry golungina 보다. Is this something with the cherry like transportation?
Yeah, this is a cable car. So when they are picking the cherries from the highest part, they send the cherries. They send the fertilizers.
Also the people?
Yes.
Que le va a permitir, o bien de allá definir las cerezas cámpara natural, que no lleguen a esta tolva, sino que las dirigimos directamente a los tanques en la parte inferior, o si no, que lleguen directamente acá a la parte cuando van a ser despulpados.
Okay.
와, 근데 이렇게 시설을 많이 하네. That's the fermentation tank?
Yes. For volume coffees, for the exotics and competition are the smallest ones.
Whoa.
Where the majority of the competition lots are processed. This is the biomaster. So this allows to have a controlled fermentation. So all the competition lots, like the 99% is processed here, but also they try to use this as like a testing samples for making like protocols of fermentations for bigger lots. Here they decide also because they do two kind of anaerobic fermentation. So we call the dried and the wet one. So the dried is only the cherries, but the wet one is with water. So trying to reduce the oxygen involved in the process. Of course, water has oxygen, but yeah, it's a different composition of the regular oxygen to the oxygen of the water. So they
How
have
many hours in terms?
It depends.
It depends.
Yeah, because another thing that they have been doing is also to see the fermentation is according to the varietal. They don't apply the same standard fermentation to all of them. For example, the Bourbons per se has a higher percent of Brix level compared to the Geisha. The Geisha is super low. Geisha is between 16 to maximum 18, but Bourbons are always between 22 to 27. So they always play with the varietal, not apply the same protocol.
So let's say, for example, the higher breeds the varietal has, you guys can do more like longer fermentation?
And no, because like for example, a big Bourbon, it has like really high Brix level. The fermentation is going to happen faster. This is not for drinking, it's just for smelling.
Smells good. Like champagne.
Este es un mosto de un borbón rosado natural y este es un mosto de un borbón ají lavado.
Yeah, they're true.
And basically they use this recipient also to get like the recipes of the protocols of fermentation. The processing for them is not simple, but the best way to describe it is in 3 stages. So the first one is going to be oxidation. That oxidation is aerobic fermentation basically.
Aerobic.
The second one will be the anaerobic fermentation that it takes place in the biomaster or in the bloom tanks. And the third one is the anaerobic fermentation but submerged, like the wet one with water involved. There is not a scientific proof, but for them in the company, they assure, for example, that they apply thermal shock to almost every coffee, and they do it to stop the fermentation. So what they do is playing with the temperature, you're killing all the microorganisms and bacteria that is happening in the fermentation, because otherwise the fermentation is going to continue in the drying process. So they do thermal choke to end the fermentation.
How do you actually do it?
So the temperature of the water, it will be between 60 to 70 degrees to stop the fermentation. And Adrian was pointing out something really important that for natural, they do it at the beginning of the fermentation process, and for the wash is at the end.
Natural at the first, wash
Wash
it
at the end.
raising the temperature 60 to 70
Yes.
degrees.
Degrees, not Fahrenheit, degrees.
That's the thermal shocks happen in that tank.
I just add hot water.
Hot water.
Yeah.
Sí, eso, pues, digamos que el tema del chip térmico hay gente que lo maneja agua caliente, agua fría. Pero por lo menos en el caso de los lavados que tienen fermentación sumergida, la anaeróbica, que el café está a una temperatura baja, entonces solo sería agua caliente, sería en agua caliente. Obviamente el agua está entre 60 y 65 grados, se ingresa el café y la temperatura pues inmediatamente empieza a ir bajando. Pero se deja alrededor de 20-25 minutos, se mueve y ya se pasa el café directamente a secar.
So here basically what they do is a pre-drying stage. The thing here is that the weather changes all the time. So in the morning could be rainy, in the midday could be like this sunny. So with this changes of temperature, the drying process is not going to be consistent. So that's why they prefer the mechanical dryer.
Okay.
So here the coffees, the majority of the time is going to be between 24 to 88 hours mostly, and then they move the coffees to the lab and the drying process there.
So the drying process is always the last. Every coffee like just do the same.
No, it depends on the wash, or if it is natural. The wash sometimes are 1 day, and natural sometimes is 3 days. So the average is 2 days. But this one is always like just a pre-drying stage. They don't dry the coffees fully here.
Let's go.
Right and left is Bourbon Sidra.
How old the trees?
4 years and a half. Yeah, Sidra is almost like that. And we are right to Ombligon.
What is good about Obligón?
It's like really to the red cherries or grapes. Very sweet, high acidity. And the funny thing is, Ombligon is called like that, but basically like the shape of the cherry is going to have like a small belly, but the bottom belly. In Espanol, ombligo,
Ombligo.
and that's why they call the cherries Ombligon.
And that variety is mixed up.
It's an Ethiopian varietal, and this has like this mutation here in Huila. So the mutation is called Ombligon.
Harvested in Huila region.
Yes. You can see like when it's becoming ripe, it disappears. And also like the shape. This is like not circular at all. But when it becomes ripe, it becomes really circular. These all cherries are from the same tree, and that you can see how they can change depending of the ripeness.
Photo spot.
심하네. 근데 계속 가네.
So they pick up the cherries, and when they arrive to the farm, they go to the first tank. So there they are making the floaters. They starting here the pulping station. If they go natural, there is another tube that is going to select the ones who go natural and the ones that go washed. And here is all the fermentation start. And Las Flores has like the same equipment. So they also have like the bioreactor. In the screen, you can see temperature, Brix level, pH, and the pressure. Because another thing that they can do here is also to make like a maceration. So they decide if they only put the cherries or they are going to do maceration during the fermentation process. And this gives you numbers of all the variables in all the time. So you can be sure to receive like all the specific information during the whole fermentation process. As I told you yesterday, the depends on the varietal. They have a standard for varietals, but no, yeah, there is like, so for each varietal they have standards, so the lower and the highest one, and when the fermentation reach one of the extremes, machine is going to give an alert. So they are going to stop it, or maybe to add water, or they have mostos that they will use all the time. So for example, for a previous fermentation of another lot of bourbon, they have mosto, they are going to add more mosto if they need regular temperature or something. And Diego is the one who receives the alerts and came here and decides what is it he has to do to rebalance the process.
과학적 접근을 할수록 뭔가 시선이나 엄청 신경을 전체적으로 다 많이 쓰는 것 같긴 해요. I was thinking if we buy coffees from the one we tasted yesterday, you guys develop like different profiles, right?
Yes.
I think we are gonna like share like the information how you start from the bottom to the end. Like how you process like this coffee.
Yeah.
We wanted to like make it everything clear, don't get like caught up by let's say like there's a coffee flavor, like really distinctive flavor, or like passion something. If you like put something in, or this flavor comes out of the fermentation process.
Yeah. No, I got it because many customers have asked the same. If we add something or they are infused, and the answer is going to be no. That they decided to make has complex the processing methods that it can give you that idea, but it's not. It's like the combination of multi-processing methods in one.
It's not putting anything.
No, you can say that what they like to add is sugar, increase the microbial activity, but otherwise they don't add anything else. I'm going to show you this. This machine is like super new, like 2 or 3 months ago they arrived, and this machine is really helpful to selecting the coffee cherries. And the thing is, as you can see, like the color of the cherry, like the ripeness point is going to change depending on the varietal. So these machines allows, like for example, they are going to select pink bourbon. So they select at least 6 to 10 good cherries, and they take pictures, and they told the machine like this is are the good ones. So they are making like protocol for each of them, and the machines decide which is good and bad according to the variety.
2011년도에 브라질 갔습니다. 컬러들 하잖아. 이게 돌아가는 도돌이 같은 게 있는데 그 안에 이게 비닐 딱 꽂히는 거 돌아가는 그 렌즈 하나하나가 통해 컬러를 잡으면서 그걸 구분하는 거. 14년 전에 브라질에서 그거를 내가 본 적이 있어요. 그때부터 제가 알죠.
This one is not built for the coffee, or this is built for the coffee?
Esta diferencia las que han creado anteriormente, ella lo que hace es tomar fotos, por eso no puede diseñar curvas, por ejemplo para el borbón rosado, para un Colombia, para un Tabi, porque lo que hace uno es enviarle primero la información a ella. Esos son los granos malos de la masa y esos son los granos buenos, y ella inmediatamente ya comienza a sacarlos. No una electrónica normal que usted le dice saque esto, dependiendo del programa, no, usted le dice, por ejemplo, si tiene solo verdes, entonces le dice solo sáqueme los verdes y déjeme los pentones.
So let's go upstairs.
여기가 시설이 제일 좋다. 투자를 엄청 많이 해요.
이 정도는 인정해야지.
Primero de todo, darle la bienvenida a Finca Las Flores y Central de Beneficio Peñas Blancas. Para nosotros como empresa familiar es un orgullo poder contar con visita metido en el cuento, llevan mucho tiempo con el tema del café y se apasionan también por esto como nosotros lo hacemos. Finca Las Flores nace en 1990, cuando mis padres, oriundos del departamento de Cundinamarca, se trasladan a vivir a esta zona. En ese entonces la finca contaba solo con 3 hectáreas y solo variedad caturra. Con el paso del tiempo ya fueron adquiriendo más terrenos y fueron esos terrenos pues cultivándolos con la misma variedad caturra. En 1998 aproximadamente ya contábamos con, bueno, la finca contaba con 100.000 árboles de caturra.
Yeah, at the beginning of 2000.
Bueno, ya en el 2006 tuvimos la primera participación en una competencia que fue Casa de la Excelencia. No obtuvimos un puesto alto, pero fue como un inicio de saber que podíamos llegar a hacer algo más. Bueno, ya en el 2014 lastimosamente nuestra madre fallece y es ahí donde mi hermano le cambia la mentalidad radical en el tema del café. Pasa de una cafecultura tradicional a ya querer llevar una cafecultura más especializada.
You started 14?
Yeah.
2014.
Ya pues el año siguiente mi hermano ingresa al SENA, es ahí donde se conoce con los muchachos del Diviso y donde empiezan a hacer un intercambio de conocimiento y experimento que iban realizando en las fincas. Ahí pues los muchachos, como todo aprendiendo, tuvieron muchas pérdidas más que ganancias
Pero eso fue lo que les hizo dar ese enriquecimiento intelectual de cómo se podrá llevar un café convencional, un café tradicional a un café de especialidad. Y ya pues actualmente, durante todos esos experimentos, esos ensayos que ellos han tenido, es que hoy gracias a eso también Finca La Flor y el Diviso están donde están.
He's the one who enjoys the most and he likes to be the star. If you follow the Instagram of Las Flores, he's the one who always is speaking and everything.
So what is the main role for him and what is the role for Joan?
Yo trabajo y él pasea. No, pues básicamente, pues aquí yo estoy encargado de la finca, estoy con Andrés, que es el administrador, que son como mis manos derechas acá. Y mi hermano ya se encarga todo el tema del laboratorio, realizar muestras, catar, la comercialización, el tema de las ferias.
I saw the map where we had our breakfast. And there's a map and like different lots, like from number 1 to like 12 or something, right? They made a like different lot section, depends on the variety.
Yes.
Which one is the biggest?
Big Bourbon. Approximately is 22,000 trees of Big Bourbon.
And the altitude, where is the lowest and where is the highest?
La altitud más alta son 1763 y la más baja, que es abajo en el Borbón, es de 1712.
Here they make like a pre-drying stage. So here the coffee, depending if it is natural honey or washed, is going to be here for 1 or 2 days maximum. They use gravity here. They are actually holes. So they open it, the coffee is going to go down for drying. So they don't have to take.
Like the physical.
Yes. So it's really easy for them.
Can I?
No, please don't. Yeah, so the coffee goes directly to the mechanical dryers. The elevator is actually for the workers, so they don't have to carry out all the bags with the coffee, so it's easier for them actually.
How many days in machine?
2 or 3 days.
나는 이런 젊은 농부들 만날 때마다 난 그냥 커피 어렵다고 해서 커피 가격이 올라가기 기다리고 막 이런 게 아니라 본인들이 개척하고 도전하고 만들어내서 자기들만의 뭔가 모델을 만들어가고 이런 것들을 우리도 잘 소개를 했어. 근데 이게 꼭 커피뿐만이 아니라 모든 그냥 젊은 사람들 다.
I hope you guys do great job. I mean, we want to showcase how like somewhere in Colombia producing like amazing coffee.
Thank you.
Good.
Good.
가장 중요한 건 커피가 너무 많이 대감을 갖고 왔어.
La primera vez que yo viajé a Corea en 2019, vi la tienda de ellos. Siempre pues, o sea, me parecieron unos clientes, pues que digamos en Corea todo el mundo los conoce a nivel mundial y pues tenerlo el día de hoy acá diciéndonos todo esto, pues para nosotros como caficultores nos llena mucho orgullo. Pues creo que vamos a poder hacer una relación comercial que sé que nuestras relaciones comerciales es para largo tiempo, siempre queremos pues innovar, tratar de hacer muy bien el trabajo para que las relaciones con ustedes, tostadores, importadores, pues sean de la mejor manera.
Finally.
Eso. Joder.
And also thank you, Diana. Like you're the one who bridged us, so yeah, cannot be done without you.
My pleasure. And here just you can have like a picture of the farm as it's raining and we go down. Yeah, we were to be in the cable car today, but it's raining.
아 진짜 아쉽다.
이게 벤틸레이션 엄청 많이 쓰는 것 같은데.
So how does machine works?
Basically, the main function of the machine is taking out the humidity. The name in Spanish that is quite similar is
Deshumidificadora.
that's like take humidity. That's the name basically. So how it works?
Iniciando, la máquina cuenta con una turbina, que es la que genera el aire. Por medio del sistema que tiene el equipo, ese aire lo calienta. Al calentarse ese aire, pasa por el grano y extrae la humedad. Pasa a un estado líquido dentro del grano y lo vuelve a un estado gaseoso. Y por medio de un condensador que tiene la parte de acá al final, vuelve a pasar esa humedad a estado líquido.
That we can see behind that the water is literally taken out. So you can see it.
이게 주 목적이 뭐냐? 결국 생거는 숲을 빼내는 거거든. 온도가 오르면 맛이 변하잖아. 닫게 하면서 이걸 빨리 하는 방법으로 공기가 건조해야 돼.
What's the temperature inside?
When it's washed, the temperature has a range between 40 and 48, no more. And for naturals, 55 is the maximum.
And it takes like 2 to 3 days.
Yes, for wash is 1.5 days or 2. For naturals, maximum 3 days. You see that the layer is very thick, so they have to also revolve the coffee at least 2 or 3 times per day. So the drying is consistent. So the one that is here, in 4 or 5 hours, they are going to move it in the middle and everything.
Also, they will change the layer.
Yes, yes.
Starting from bottom to the top.
Yes, and for them, and it's really helpful because they can take advantage and be more productive when they are in the peak of the harvest. Because if they have many cherries, they have to dry everything. They are going to take like 2 or 3 weeks. Here, they can dry the coffee faster and also to help other producers with the production in the peak of the harvest.
우리 사실 이야기하지만 썬드라이는 편차가 너무 심해. 근데 이게 낮은 온도로 일관성 있게 좀 안정적인 결과물이고 어쨌든 이렇게 생각하는 이유도 결국은 결과물이 좋았습니다. 우리 주요 프로듀서들 한번 딱 모아가지고 워크샵하고 밥 먹고 이야기하고 서로 이렇게 교류시켜주고 이런 것을 했으면 좋겠다. 뭐 한번 해서 잘 되면 꾸준히 해도 좋고 여기 이 친구들의 어떤 경험과 이런 게 다른 친구들한테도 엄청 도움이 됩니다. 이게 우리가 그런 일들을 좀 하면 좋겠다. 우리가 잘해서 합시다.
오. 여름에 이런 게 있었으면 좋아.
청량감이
과일차다, 과일차.
Gracias. Hasta luego.
와 여기 진짜 절벽이다.
안 떨어지다, 안 떨어지네.
대박.
초창기를 맡으면 먹었던 게 우리 인생이 그 이후로 바뀌는 거야.
지금 굉장히 소중한 순간이잖아요.